Hello there, today I'm at the Orassy and I'm about to chat to founder and owner of this place, Mr. Konstantin Pavlidis. Now, I need to know everything. I'm going to start off with, what is it you do here?
Well, the place is called Orassy, and that means vision. It's in ancient Greek, and what we do is help people to understand how to find their true sense of self, gaining vision through life's eyes and ears rather than our own personal, I would say, contrived or programmed way of thinking and understanding what life's about. Seeing and hearing through life's eyes and ears is my little sort of motto, and Orassy helps us to achieve that. So the Orassy is basically focusing on health and on self-development. I use that term as whole self-development, basically understanding meaning and purpose, why you're here on the planet, and how can you achieve that in the most direct, simple, and efficient and effective way without wasting time and causing pain and suffering, neither to yourself or anyone else.
So, what do you do?
Well, I wear different hats because things have developed throughout my life. I started off as a movement martial artist, gymnast, dancer. Then I moved into studying therapy, science in particular in terms of my academic studies. And then I became a therapist, so I learned how to do sports injuries, sports medicine, and I've worked with shiatsu and acupuncture and many other therapeutic modalities and healing, which I learned from my mother. And then I began to do research, and the main area of the research is altered states of consciousness and understanding brainwave patterns and the difference between a parasympathetic and the sympathetic states, voluntary, involuntary nervous system. And the main aspect of that was that most people would look at someone who was in meditation or in a trance state and they can't tell the difference. And there is a very big difference between prayer and meditation, therapy and healing, a trance state, or a state of mental disorder. Yeah, someone going through a schizophrenic breakdown, for example. And I was looking at what are these differences, who has done the research, and how we can define them to try to create a reference, a standard reference. It's not been created to date. There isn't a proper reference to help to discern what the differences are.
Okay.
Using simple physical parameters, meaning brainwave patterns, heart rate variability, oxygen uptake, and blood pressure. So that's my research arm, more or less. Some people call me a philosopher because I've got a lot of knowledge of different wisdom traditions and philosophies. But I think what has grown out of that for me is what I call praxosophy, which means the practical application of what you learn. Not just being a friend of wisdom, sitting and discussing all this knowledge, which is in and of itself fascinating, exciting, inspirational, but then what do we do with it?
You have to go and do something about that.
Well, yeah, and putting it into practice I think is much more important. Otherwise, it's only, potential is only as good as the practice you can put it into. People talk about potential all the time. This person's got that potential. I want to develop my potential. How do you do that without understanding, first and foremost, what your actual talents are, what your gifts are, what is your purpose? And so the Orassy has 5 main arms. We look at health. Yeah. We look at Orassy life, so that's the self-development side. There's the academy, so that's the teaching elements of learning courses and so forth. There's Orassy research, which is all the stuff that I talked about. And I do research with different institutes, particularly in Russia, because they have a very highly developed, let's say, school of metaphysical research. The paranormal metaphysical phenomena. Yeah, it's been going on for at least, I'd say now, 75, 80 years. Long before it was that popular in the West. Really? And then there's Orassy Media. So media, what we do is, in our media approach, is just to offer information to people that will be of interest, information that is based on scientific research that is not necessarily reaching lots of publications, people who do extraordinary work that very few people in the public sector will get to know about because they tend to stay within peer-reviewed circles and so forth, or just informing people about simple but very, very key factors in life, like what is karma.
Okay.
Yeah, so a lot of people this word is another one of these bantered words that, there's...
Well, that's the thing, is defining these words.
Defining them,
and
yes.
Helping people understand what they mean.
Yeah, exactly. So those 5 arms are basically the arms of the Orassy itself. The way I work is helping people to understand what is karma. There are 5 karmic keys, I call them.
Okay.
Keys to your karma. So the first is health. Leads into wealth, leads into direction in life, leads into relationships, all manner of relationships, between yourself, your family, your friends, your colleagues, work partners, whatever, and finally, love. So if you get a person to look at these 5 aspects, and I ask them, I could say to you, because, for example, earlier you said, how could we work together? What would you do to help me find myself or basically get on the track of asking the question of what am I here for?
Yeah.
So I would say, what do you want? And then you write it down. According to one of these 5, not all 5, just select which one is most significant for you at this moment, in this point in time, and then write down what you want. And then after you've written that down, I want you to ask yourself, is this what I think I want, or is it what I feel I want?
Yes.
Right? You need to start to learn to discern the difference between your thoughts and your feelings.
Do many people, sorry to cut through you, but it's fascinating to me. Do many people know what they want? Is that the biggest problem?
It is the biggest problem, because they're stuck or they're confused between thoughts, feelings. Yeah. I could say thoughts are more rational and, could say conscious, cognitive, etc. Feelings are not so discernible, that you cannot explain them in the same way as you can thoughts, but we have them all the time. And some people are much more thought-based, others are more feeling, others are more sensorial, and the 3 together, when they are unified, that's what leads to intuition.
Right.
And then I ask you that question after you've written that first 2 down. Is this what I think I want? Is this what I feel I want? And so, is it what your intuition tells you?
Yeah.
It's actually what you want. And then, interesting, it's a probing process that you conduct yourself. All I do is give you the tools, I give you some methodology, and I give you a direction. And the rest is up to you to do, and I observe, and I obviously will guide the process. That basically forms the foundation of then learning more about yourself through life brilliance, which I think is vital, because we are very busy with our lives, our version of life, or that of our parents, because we could come from a culture where parents are very, very important, and we have to make sure that we facilitate their needs as well, and, and we take on their perception of life to be approved, because the inner child wants approval from mother and father. So it's about recognition, acknowledgement, approval. And then I teach people about the brilliance of life as it expands into natural law. There's what I call the intelligence that is there, that those trillions of cells in our body somehow know exactly what they need to do without our conscious intervention.
So tapping into that.
Tapping into this and how it works. I teach the biology behind it, so there's biological proof. Then I basically guide us through particular exercises, meditations, and breathing techniques, and visualizations, and movement exercises.
And do you think people can do this when they are children, when they are younger, and
absolutely.
then life takes that away from them?
Yes. The thing is, if you don't come from a culture that knows how to utilize those faculties as a way of teaching, right? Or it's a part of play. It's a part of getting children to become naturally open, communicative, creative, expressive. It's all very nice. And then, time to get serious. You go to school now, you forget all that stuff. You can do that in your free time at home. But now you're going to learn how to count and do reading, writing, arithmetic, and we're going to teach you to become a good citizen.
Stern American accent you got there.
Yeah.
I do find that fascinating, but what you're talking about is the Western world there. That seems to be the world that I grew up in.
Yeah.
That's my grandmother's very spiritual. I went to a school in a town in South Wales where I was in a classroom of 35 people, and we were told what to learn and how to behave, and not to expect much. And it feels like I'm 35 years old now, and only in the last 5 years have I actually gone, hang on a minute, that's all rubbish. It didn't really resonate well with me, and I had struggled very deeply with the kind of the inner turmoil of that pushing against what I was taught all those years ago. Do you feel that it's in the Western world there's some sort of weird, or some sort of weird, again, that's my brain pushing against it, some sort of spiritual revolution in some sort of way?
I think there is a soul revolution.
Okay.
People's inner voice, their soul is saying, I've had enough of not being listened to, being treated like a machine, being discarded, and being hijacked by your personality and character, not even considering to ask me, your soul, why am I here?
Yeah,
what
what's
is my purpose? You've done everything that everyone else has told you, or whatever you've decided is correct for yourself.
Yeah.
But what about my purpose? And how can I achieve this? And I can let you know, you existed before. There are aspects of your previous lives that are still in this one. And they're part of your, what wisdom tradition calls memory body. And you bring that. Water holds memory. We are made 70% by volume of water, 99% molecularly of water. Why should that water be different to the water that is sitting in a glass and that we experimentally observe and research and find that it holds water? Well, what about our physical body's water?
Yeah.
It's the same thing. So the answer to that particular statement is that I would say your inner voice is crying out for you to begin to pay attention to your more innate and essential aspects, rather than the thoughts and the belief systems which have been acquired and contrived. They're not your natural self. They're not, therefore, your real self, is what wisdom traditions would say. They call it your essential nature in Buddhism. You could call it the Holy Ghost part of you.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah,
And this is the important part. And when we don't pay attention to it, and we ignore its purpose and reason, we live our lives, our conscious mind's purpose and reason, not that of our soul.
So what is integrative medicine? Talk me through that.
Okay. Integrative medicine, as the name implies, is about integrating key principles. In the West, it's begun to be popularized in the United States and brought into this country probably about 12 years ago now. The idea was to look at lifestyle and the impact of your overall understanding and belief systems on your health and life state. Now, one of the problems there is too few people who have a medical background also understand all of these aspects because they don't study them. And the limitations of it, as opposed to like functional medicine, which looks at conditions, well, symptoms and conditions, and only what we can touch on regarding what results tests give us, whether it's cholesterol levels or ions in the blood and so forth. What is very important about integrative medicine is different to holistic medicine, approaching something in a holistic way, is that we take elements of other systems and we integrate them. Okay? Give you an example. The Orassy's approach takes allopathy, which is classical Western medicine, that's based on science, and CAM, which is complementary alternative medicine, based on wisdom tradition, and integrates them through a scientific approach using a platform which basically is made up of 6 different technologies and devices. So it's a digital platform that helps the language of the different parts of ourselves to understand each other. So we look at we start with our approach, doing the 12-step program. The first 6 steps are looking at glucose, oxygen. It looks at the hydrogen potential, which is your pH. It looks at the electrical potential, which is what I spoke of in the past about the voltage, because our membranes need to have minus 70 millivolts to be healthy. Otherwise, when they start diminishing to around the 30 or 20, that's when they degenerate and become cancerous. So we look at all of these different types of factors, and there's an assessment procedure. We then have a consultation and say, okay, this is what we've discerned from the assessment procedure, and this is what we recommend you do. So the first thing we always do straight after that is to give you a diet based on what we've seen through the blood analysis. This is very important as well. And then we get you onto the 6-step training method, which is helping to align the thoughts and the feelings with the body through breathing, meditation, visualization, stretching, strengthening, and Qi development, vitality development. And then we get people on devices where they receive pulsed electromagnetic fields, Schumann resonance, which helps to align the alpha waves so that you have more clarity and focus. The Kangen water that we use and other water systems, which basically are structured water, ionized water, electrolyzed water, and water that basically is very, very high in antioxidants. One jug of that is equivalent to the antioxidants of 5 kilos of berries, for example. A lot easier to drink a jug in about an hour. And then finally, we use far and near infrared frequencies, which help stimulate the cellular membranes for clearance of the toxins, etc.
Yeah.
So our approach to integrative medicine is integrative, the mental, the emotional, and the physical, so that they can start to talk to each other, know about each other, and we get a whole self-development process going on.
I want to talk about science and spirituality and the link between them both. Yeah. What is your approach to that? Because it's two very different worlds in my head. It's very simplified in my head. You've got science and you've got spirituality, and they're very separate. There is a connection. There must be. How do you connect that?
So a lot of people have interest in this particular topic because I would say that interest developed through the possibility of using more advanced science to explain spirituality, as opposed to, you see, science sees the foundation of all existence as material, it's matter, and spirituality sees the foundation of all existence as spirit or consciousness. It negates, therefore, matter, and science doesn't negate spirit, but it says, tell me in material terms what is spirit.
Right.
So therein lies the problem, and it's like a big, massive brick wall that is very difficult.
You can't necessarily prove it.
You can't use this language and paradigm and perception of life and worldview to explain that one,
yes.
i.e. the materialistic, the Newtonian mechanistic paradigm. Right? Newton said everything is solid, everything happens outside of you and is discernible, everything is independent of your existence, it exists before you, like, mountains and structures, etc. So you have no impact on it whatsoever.
Yeah.
Yeah. And everything is predictable and calculable, and therefore we have no impact on it. Everything runs like clockwork, and that the foundation of all existence is matter. It's material. It's a particle of some form.
Yes.
Okay? And spirit says, well, God creates everything. We could basically say, God, what is God? God is it's all-knowing, omniscient.
Yeah.
Therefore, first off, it's everywhere, so it's omnipresent. Therefore, it's all-powerful, it's omnipotent, and because of that, it's omniscient, it knows everything. That's great, but it doesn't actually describe what God is. That's a kind of description of who God might be.
Yes.
But not what God is. So Buddhism doesn't talk about gods in that sense, or God itself, or a God. It talks about the nature of existence. It talks about your essential nature. It talks about nature of existence and the way in which the two are connected as a result of the void. We are born from the void, from nothingness. So the nature of existence is no one thingness. It's not a thing. It's not material. Now, that again sounds like, oh, it's a bit too esoteric and too etheric. No. The bridge between them is quantum physics. Solidity is not the case. We are 99.99999% space in our bodies and around us. So, goodbye, solid world. Okay?
Yeah.
Nothing is predictable because our mere observation of an object interferes or impacts it. Okay? So we cannot turn around and say that everything happens. Well, first and foremost, we'll go back to the second one. We impact our external environment means that it only exists because of your recognition of it existing. Turn your eyes away to something, close your eyes and block your senses, it no longer exists, other than in a memory.
Right.
Okay? What's important to understand, science and spirituality have a sense of separation in the eyes of the majority of people because they are adopting a Newtonian perspective of science. And then there's another perspective called quantum physics. So if we say, what is quantum physics? It's the science of the study of discrete amounts of energy. Okay, so we're describing energy. And they exist. First off, we've come to realize that things manifest out of the blue, not in a linear manner, but in a circular manner. In other words, you can't say that this phenomenon, causality, is caused by something that is linear. It actually happens in a spontaneous manner. It happens in a way which we cannot linearly necessarily understand. We're talking about particles that are tiny.
Yes.
For larger bodies, Newton's concepts and laws apply still. But when we go to the very small ones, they manifest out of the blue and disappear.
Yeah.
They manifest in a way that are not discernible. So we call this discontinuity. And they are not limited to space and time. They exist outside of space and time. That means they're not local. For example, I send a message to someone who's in Australia.
You can do that.
They're picking up that message. They then respond, and then I can phone up and say, did you get my message? Say, yes, I picked up what you wanted. Now, where's the locality involved in that? There's nothing. Not localized.
No.
Where's space and time involved? It's not. Where's the logic, the linearity involved in that? It's not there. And so we can discern things in ways when we're picking up on someone, picking up on a message, we say guidance tells me this, etc.
Yeah.
This is quantum physics explains how all of these phenomena are functions of consciousness and causality. That's very important to understand.
Okay.
Because by utilizing a Newtonian perspective of science and trying to impose that on spirituality, you're never going to bridge the gap.
Yeah.
By utilizing a quantum perspective of science, you begin to see how what has been found through mathematics and experimentation sounds a hell of a lot like spirituality. And this is the whole point.
Yeah.
Spooky things happen, as Einstein said.
Yeah, of course.
And how can this be? God does not play dice. Things can't be random. He believed that everything happened for a purpose. Everything was discernible. Everything followed specific order and structure.
And you don't believe that?
Well, it's not a question of what I believe. It's what quantum physics has told us. You can't discern everything in that clear-cut manner, especially not in the universal levels or in the micro levels. And therein lies you can say, it refutes Newtonian perspectives.
What is the quantum worldview?
Quantum worldview is about seeing the reality that quantum physics has reflected to us, both through experimentation and also the mathematics to support it through equations, etc. And understanding that when I said earlier, seeing and hearing through life's eyes and ears, we're talking about understanding that there is the field, the quantum field, there is consciousness, and that by seeing and understanding that life functions in that manner, it's like a reality check. I call it the science of reality. And it's being aware of the fact that we are creating our own reality. So we have to be a lot more mindful of what thoughts we allow to cross our mind, what are our motives. The motivation is far more important than intention. People speak about intention, and when the intention is strong and focused and aligned and good, then things will all work. That's fine. What is your motive? Are you really aware of the consequences? What is it that you really ask? This is why I put those questions forward and I say,
what do you want?
What do you want? Is it what you think you want? Is it what you feel you want? Is it what you intuit that you want? Because that brings you closer to your creativity. And that's what the quantum reality offers us. Constant. That's why I say spontaneous creativity, that's constant. It doesn't come once in a blue moon. And that's what quantum worldview helps us to achieve, to be able to practice that. Put it into practice all the time, not randomly. That's why I'm saying that technology is a wonderful vehicle to explain how all of these so-called paranormal, metaphysical, weird and wonderful phenomena actually happen.
Is there hope for humanity?
Well, we need to be specific about what. Hope for what? We need to ask ourselves. Because when we say, is there, because this is a question a lot of people put forward, is there hope for humanity? Can we be specific about what aspect of humanity? Is it their future? Is it their lifestyle? Is it their health? Is it our ability to still co-work and function in a symbiotic way with the planet because we're polluting it so much?
Yeah.
Is it all of those questions? I would say there's hope for any being that's willing to be responsible for their existence and not put blinds or shut down their senses and say, I don't want or need to know any more than what's there.
It doesn't affect me personally right now, so I'm not going to bother doing anything about it.
Yeah.
So no then.
The answer is there is as much hope available as a person is willing to take responsibility for, from my perspective.
Right. It leads me on quite nicely actually to this wonderful and interesting generation of millennials.
Yes.
You know, because it's like we talk about mental health and talk about awareness. I have a lot of faith in millennials. Do you?
Well, I'll say this much about what I've observed. Millennials have a more open, more accepting, and a more ready to receive and I can say adaptable mindset.
Yeah.
Than previous generations have had. Because the previous generations have had a lot of expectation imposed upon them. A typical example is, you get married at a certain age, you have 2.4 kids,
you retire
you'll
at
have
60.
your home, you have your mortgage, you have whatever. And so everyone ties themselves down and into a structure, an infrastructure that's been set up by the powers that be and have been told that this is what equals safety, security, and progress.
Yes.
Millennials don't give a damn about safety, security, and progress in that way. Right? They would rather just try things out. They're happy to rent homes, rent cars, rent phones, rent whatever, as long as they get a lot of experience. So there's a lot more open-mindedness. But wherein that, I would say the weakness there is they lack experience. They lack, when I say experience, I mean solidity in experience. Right? They have, opening yourself up to do a lot of things gives you exposure to and receiving a lot of information. But how do you ground that? How do you consolidate it and use it to build something that will enable your growth, your development, and what I think is most important is your evolution.
Yes.
And that's very, very important. But I find millennials are a lot more, because their programming in their mindset is a lot more broad spectrum. Because they've used computers since they were children.
They're used to receiving an abundance of information.
Indeed. And the brain can cope with that.
Yeah.
What it doesn't know how to do very well is translate that information into something solid and I would say substantial, so that they can feel confidence, trust, and a sense of self-esteem. And that's where those three aren't very strong with millennials. Does that make any sense?
No, that does make a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So
totally.
Unless they haven't lived enough the information that they've got a huge database.
Yes.
Right. So that's all the content, but they don't necessarily know the context.
Right.
And that's what experiential learning is very. It's the key to all the work that I do. It's the foundation of it is experiential learning.
Is it a concentration issue as well, that they can't really stick with one thing for a long period of time?
Exactly what we said before. So their nervous system is accustomed to picking up lots of information, and they haven't done a practice to actually ground it so that it becomes something, it becomes a part of them and not extraneous to them. It's almost as if their thoughts, their memories, etc., are in a cloud. Just like you put all the information up into a cloud, not in their hard drive. It's almost outside of them.
Yeah.
It hasn't found its way into their personal hard drive, so it forms a part of their personal being, their personal computer.
Do you have faith in the millennials? Do you believe in them?
I would say I'd like to work with a lot more.
They need your help.
Well, I'm
I
very
think
happy.
everybody needs your help. And if anybody does need your help, how do they find out about you? How do they get in touch with you?
Well, simple ways. Obviously, word of mouth is very important. You go online, use Orassy.com, ORASSY.com. We were formerly Orassy Ultimate Health, and so both platforms are functional. You just call the Orassy, find out what's going on. You go online, you can subscribe to the newsletter, you'll see the different activities, the different workshops, different seminars. We do life encounter journeys where we take people to specific sites where they're there for a minimum of 7 days. The day starts with a yoga class, they then have a very healthy breakfast, and we go out to sites and we make connections with sacred sites, power sites, etc., to learn how to communicate with other faculties, those 5 that I spoke of before. And basically interact with people in those cultural backgrounds so they see through their eyes and not, I'm a tourist here trying to find, have an experience and find out what's going on. Seeing through another person's eyes is a great skill. It's a great art. Seeing and hearing and feeling through another person's being. And this is what develops empathy and what develops thereafter compassion. It's very important to understand this.
Very, very important things.
If we don't have compassion in that sense, not I will be pious and I will bless you and I will feel for you, that's sympathy, it's different. An empath already can see and feel through. So the compassion comes with what is the best way to help this person learn their lesson without me interfering and actually taking away from them, robbing them of the experience they need so that they can grow. And that takes discernment, which takes time to learn. But it's possible.
It is possible.
Yeah.
What about the millennials are watching? How do they get in touch on social media? Do you have like an Instagram?
Yeah, we have all of the, there's Facebook and there's Twitter and Instagram. And
All on the website?
yeah, it's on the website.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time. I really, really do appreciate it. It's fascinating. I really have learned a lot. My mind is officially been blown.
And we can measure that. Scientifically validated.
But thank you.
Very welcome. It's a great pleasure. And as I said before, that your openness and your willingness to see and experience through different eyes is what we all need to learn to do. Because otherwise, we end up staying in a bubble.
Yeah.
And we're not really engaging with life. And it's a pity to waste it. It's Orassy's slogan, by the way. Make it count. Make this life count. Just make it count.
I intend to.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good.